Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and those beyond the binary. Welcome to Step Back Tonight, episode, what are we at? 19! Holy moly. That means we've been doing this for quite a while now. That's a few months down. Yeah, welcome to the stream, everybody. This is, well, alright. Let's go with down to brass tacks. This is Step Back Tonight. This is a weekly Tuesday night show I do where I talk about stuff, answer questions, chill, hang out with you guys. And usually every episode's got some sort of thing to it that we hopefully get to. But I will say that sometimes we don't because we get distracted by fun stuff. I will say that this is a wrap up for all the new people because holy moly, there are a lot of new people in the channel. Ever since yesterday when I released the Paris Commune video that came out recently. Tell me if my quality is good. YouTube's saying that it's bad, but everything seems to be fine with me. So, anyways, yeah. So I released this Paris Commune video yesterday, and just around the time that I was celebrating getting over 2,000 subscribers in 1 month, which is about double the average, then I released what is now, I think I can start to say, the most successful Step Back video ever. At least in the first few hours. So who's in the chat? Who we got here? We got Ina, Comrade Jeb, Cypher, Amelia M. Is Amelia M? Are you that? You're that cool punk person from Twitter, right? You're the. Are you? I can't tell because the picture's so small. Are you Anarcho-Pacifist? I think is on Twitter. I can't tell. The picture's really small, but I think I see a hint of green. I think the green hair. Anyways, yes. Okay, so you're not that. Okay. No worries. And, yeah, so I released a video yesterday that went really, really well. It's still going well. It actually, we just, if I look at the analytics right now, at around 11 o'clock this morning, I guess YouTube decided that this was a video worth recommending out to other people. So now it's getting like a... it's getting like a bunch of algorithmic love, so who knows where this could go. This is usually a very good sign for a video. Okay, everyone's asking about the pies. The thing that happened was I played Undertale with no concept as to how the game worked. I didn't know anything. I had no reading beforehand. And when I did that thing in a boss fight where you are expected to lose... I ate a pie to restore health, and that apparently is like the worst thing that you can do, and is apparently just like destroys your chances of winning the game or something like that. I don't exactly know the story behind that, but apparently that's the worst thing you can do. It's the cardinal sin of Undertale that you are not told ever. But there you are. And we were returning to that today, so I thought I would make a joke about how I don't have the pie. You ate the pie. Yes, I guess that is... I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing, okay? Hello, Comrade Archer. Alright, so... let's start the struggle session of anti-Anpath questions. Oh, man. So, yeah, so for anybody who hasn't been scared away yet, I imagine that the 100 and some subscribers that I got in the last 24 hours, some of them might pop in here to say hello to the stream for the first time. So hello. If you're a new person, sound off in the chat. If this is your first Step Back Tonight, I always like to see if there's anybody new here. And besides that, I'll answer some questions from folks, and when you guys get bored of me answering questions about stuff, then maybe we can get some video games going. And I have water this time. I just gotta open it away from the microphone because it's very loud. There we go. It's lime water. Also, should mention, I got this. This is, well, I've had this for a while. I've had this shirt since 2017, but this is one of 2 Step Back History t-shirts that exist in the world. And as of this morning, I'm trying to get to the point that I can do Step Back full time. So I'm trying to see if I can find some monetization options that I can open up, and one of them is I'm going to design a t-shirt. I don't expect too many people to buy them, but I know that I would like one that has fewer holes in it, so I thought I would make one, and I think that I think that I would like to buy one for myself, and if I'm going to buy one for myself, I might as well put it in public so that other people who want one can get one too. So, what's your... Okay. You could tell 255 AD is not here yet. I think, like, what's it called? I'm trying to remember who it is. I think it was when I had Ollie on the like, month... Oh, there's 255. I knew it. 255, you are a reliable, you are like the Tides, you are possibly the most like dedicated Step Back fan I think there is. I love when you show up and do stuff and give us the hard-hitting questions. But I remember Ollie being like, wow, you know, most streams you come in and they ask like about Pokemon, and you guys had like all these like really good questions for him, and he commented after the stream to me that man, you have one brainy audience, and I love it. I love that happened. All right, let me check. What else should I talk about? Channel's been going really well. Stuff's been going well. I should probably plan these things out so that I'm not like wasting your time while we're starting. And yeah, let's answer some questions. I also should apologize, Amelia, for not knowing that you weren't the same person. I don't think all punks look alike. In fact, punks go to extreme lengths to look very unique. So, I don't even know if you're a punk. The picture's too small. I blame the pictures and my bad eyesight. Okay. Caitlin Jean's son, I'm gonna mess it up either way. You should don't interact, but wanted to say that you've been binge watching the video since this morning. Love your work. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, Caitlin, welcome to the channel. It sounds like I'm hoping you had a very good I hope you had a great time doing that. Whenever I hear that someone's been patronizing, or someone's been watching a bunch of my videos, and I hope they're having a good time. All right. On the surfs, oh yeah, you recommend Teespring if you want a company to handle everything for you, like printing, not a worker co-op though. No, the surfs, yeah, at the moment I'm looking. I think Teespring is the one that that Natalie uses, which makes me think that if Natalie's using it, that she's probably done the research. That's probably not a good heuristic to go by, but you know, it's a thing. But yeah, all right, well, thank you, Halen. Is there anybody else who's new? I want to. Don't be shy, friends. If this is the first time you've come to a Step Back Tonight live stream, I want to say hello to you. And everybody else does too, because everyone's your friend. Everybody in Step Back Tonight, we're all friends. 10-22-X1 Fujioka. Well, can I just call you Fujioka or maybe Fuji? Well, welcome Fujioka to the stream. That's awesome. I hope you're gonna have a good time. All right, let's answer a couple questions. First step back tonight because it's a bit of a horrid time, really. Yeah, I know. I with my day job, it's kind of hard for me to do a stream that's friendly to Europeans. That's for sure. Trust me, the time. Yeah, I like the ones which are not in the middle of the night in Europe. I'm trying to get better at that. Unfortunately, this is the best I can do at the moment. This is one of the reasons why I am trying to get... This is one of the things I will do when I get to full-time step backing, is I will go back to the to doing something in the afternoons, so that one afternoon of the week at least, so that the Europeans get an opportunity to hang out here as well. We're all pacifists. Oh boy. All right. Ina is our first question, and they would like to know, why are you an anarcho-pacifist, and what does pacifism mean to you? Or yeah, why do I consider myself an anarcho-pacifist? Well, I consider myself an anarcho-pacifist for several reasons. I mean, the obvious thing about anarchism is that anarchism is a form of socialism that is strictly anti-authoritarian, and a pacifist like myself would argue that if you're against the coercion, if you're against the state because it is coercive, then why do you think that an act of violence done in opposition to the state is any less coercive when not in self-defense? Basically, the idea is that I have a very, there is the soft spiritual, spirit answer, which is the idea that violence is a thing that forever tarnishes the soul. You will never be able to take back an act of lethal force that you have committed on people. Typically, my concept of violence extends more to the act of revolutionary violence and murder, and not to self-defensive actions and punching Nazis. I think that's its own thing. But if I were to expand past that, I think that revolutions... This is my practical argument for pacifism that I always push. I'm sure that some of you old hat subscribers have heard this one before, but the reason I consider myself a pacifist is because I think that narrative and emotion play a larger role in the way that people choose their political paths than people like to admit. And so we learned this in the experiment of the Soviet Union, where it does not matter. The ideas and thoughts do not matter if you are responsible for some of the worst things that have happened in someone's life. It doesn't matter how right Karl Marx's dialectic about capitalism is. If you are Estonian and Stalin's men killed your dad and killed your mom and left you an orphan, you're going to hate the Soviets. You're going to hate communism, and you are more likely to take the most radical stance against that you can, which is basically putting yourselves into the hands of the far right. And so I do think that when we commit acts of violence, we are sowing more seeds that will create opposition to us than actually create positive change in the direction that we want. And when I say this stuff, I get two quick criticisms, and I can address both of them. The first one is, but what about self-defense? And this is why I say that the act of violence should be a choice, and the act of violence should be a choice that is known, knowing that you are creating those negative consequences. And it's not a thing that, this isn't a right or wrong thing, this is just the thing that happens or the thing that doesn't happen. You defend yourself against a cop who's beating you up for being a person of color, and you beat up that cop is going to spin the story so that he's the hero, as all people do. That's how our minds work. And he's going to tell his family, and that family is going to become just a little bit more racist. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have done it, because you're defending yourself, but we have to know that will be the impact of the things that we do. Which, in my mind, means that we need to be considering other options. The other thing that I would like to mention is that the second thing that comes to mind is, well, then, like, what's your answer? And this is the thing I say that frustrates the hell out of everybody who I say that I'm an anarchist or a pacifist to, and that is, I don't have the answer. I don't think that having a one-size-fits-all answer to all contexts is a solution. I think that we need... I think that I'm kind of parroting Noam Chomsky in one line, which is that, honestly, at this moment, we need some radical new ideas. We need another like, Karl Marx, another Kropotkin, another Bakunin, and not just be fighting these ideas that are centuries old, and find a way to reorganize society without a state and reorganize society without capitalism that is that makes sense for a 21st century world. And I think that my like inklings aren't onto trying to as the neoliberal state, as capitalism kind of eats itself, then we need to build the things that the neoliberal state is eroding away ourselves. And my hope is that we can weather the state's attempts to stop that and eventually create the society that we want and make the old order more or less useless, just redundant, anachronistic. But I know that's kind of slow. That's like a process that is not where we are now. And this is why when the IPCC report came out about climate change, showed that we have like 12 years to turn this ship around. I got a little bit more, I have a little bit more sympathy with Marxist-Leninists who have the idea that they want a stateless society too. They just want to make a state and a military in order to appropriate and take away the capitalist means of production and then dissolve the state. But honestly, I don't know if... I don't have a good ANPAC solution to dealing with the climate crisis. And I would say that no one else does either. So, please, thinkers, keep saying things. All right, and now I was on a roll there, so I do have to give a shout out. Jonathan Chavez, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. You have no idea how much these things help make this stuff sustainable. Like I said, I am currently doing a day job that is basically like more or less full-time work on top of like step back and then 2 other side gigs in order to keep to supplement my income. And it would change things in a huge way if I could get to the point where like I could basically cut off the day job and go full-time. And so even things like a $10 super chat change stuff so much. And so I'm going to read your super chat and then we'll answer your question and we'll keep moving along. Hey, what's up? Love your stuff. Do you think the West has warped what had happened in the Russian Revolution? What are your thoughts on Lenin? Well, okay. Let's talk about that. All right. The Russian Revolution, I think, is something that has been, in some ways, warped. This actually comes a lot of the conversation I had with Donnie Gluckstein. And one of the things I think is the Russian Revolution, we conceive of the Russian Revolution in such Western terms. And now I know that's going to sound like Vladimir Putin making excuses for killing journalists by saying that freedom of speech is a Western right, not a human right. But hear me out. The Soviet Revolution came in the context of a literal emperor, a rather harsh and cruel emperor who cared very little for the literal peasants in his country, who then abdicated to an extremely weak liberal government that the Bolsheviks saw as an opportunity to overthrow the order. But keep in mind that the Bolsheviks came up in a situation where they were in a over-the-top, nasty dictatorship, one that had brutal repressions. My wife Kelly and I have actually just watched Fiddler on the Roof over the weekend. I've seen it a few times, but I haven't seen it in a long time. And just remembering that, the Russian pogroms and the oppression of Jewish people, and just the brutality of Russia basically dominating all of the territory that they took from the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, created a lot of people who were like, you know what, fuck the Tsar. And, I mean, yeah, it was brutal. It was, I do think that the Bolsheviks very quickly turned into a model of basically repressing the people of their in their own movement, as revolutions always do. This is kind of part of my anarcho-pacifist part, is as soon as revolution got to a certain point, they started becoming paranoid that everybody who disagreed with the central committee was a dissident and needed to be killed. And that's when, they started messing around with that's when Trotsky started attacking Nestor Makhno in Ukraine, and really trying to keep left wing, the left wing communists out of the central power. And by the end, by the time Lenin died, the people who were in his inner circle were basically just completely dominated by totalitarians. And I think that more or less, what someone said in the chat, when Lenin died, and Stalin took over, the Soviet Revolution was dead. And I think that I plan on making a video probably later this year, if not in 2020, about Stalin and about how the left needs to address the some of the darker things that have happened under regimes like the Soviet, like Stalinist Soviet Union. But that we have to do it with a understanding of context and understanding of the situation those people were living in. And on top of that, we also have to look at how, even though Stalin was, let's be honest, more or less tried to turn the Soviet Union into a fascist dictatorship by implementing nationalist ideas and trying to make the Soviet Union more nationalistic, and all those things. I think that Nikita Khrushchev's attempts to bring the Soviet Union back are commendable. I still think that it was brutal. I still think the Soviet Union maintained a ring of satellite states that they kept under control with a pretty iron fist. Not saying that the U.S. didn't do that either, but it is something that needs to be discussed. And so, I do think that there's a big issue with the Soviet experiment at that part. But I think that you've got that like in many ways, like the people, like all of the dumb like right-wing fascist YouTube and fascist Reddit people who make all of these memes about the Soviet Union not having food. And I think that a lot of the ideas that like a lot of the concepts that Americans have about the Soviet Union come from the Stalinist era, and they have basically assumed that the entirety of Soviet history was the Stalin period, and I think that's unfair. Alrighty. Yeah, I think, oh, why was that stopped? Yeah, Terry is correct. Communists don't make treaties with Nazis. All right, let's Fujioka wants to know, so what do you think of Philosophy Tube's video on Steve Bannon? It was good. I really liked the way that he talked about how Bannon is, I really like the whole video. For anybody who hasn't seen it, spoiler alert, the whole video is built around this metaphor of fire, and how Steve Bannon is this guy who metaphorically has piled up a pile of kindling, thrown tons of gasoline on this pile of wood, and is holding a match in his mouth, or, you know, putting a whole bunch of matches nearby, and then trying to not be considered responsible for the fire that is starting. And the idea that, you know, the rhetoric he has an impact is important. I do think that you should definitely, if you haven't seen Ollie's video on Steve Bannon, I will get you guys a link so you can check it out later. Hope preferably after the stream is done. Also, noise alert. I recently got a mechanical keyboard, so enjoy that noise. All right. So that's that is at the time when I last watched it. So let's don't I'll take that one back. I'm gonna delete that. Go to this link. That one goes to like a few minutes later. Keyboard ASMR. Oh geez. Can't fault Philosophy Tube for getting political in the current climate, but really dug it when he would give us Philosophy 101 viddies. Yeah, unfortunately, I think that King Peppy, I think that there is definitely something that we're in a new moment, but also on top of that, YouTube educators are hopefully starting to realize that the facts and the education that we give can't be like school on YouTube. If the things you're teaching are not relatable, if they do not tell a compelling story that you feel understands your life and the world around you, then you're not going to like it. I think that Natalie ContraPoints taught us that if you want to teach somebody something, you have to meet them where they are, and you have to tell them about things that they know about and in a way that they can relate to. And so when it comes to things like history, when it comes to things like philosophy, you have to really think about what the what impact does philosophy have on your daily life? You have to think about what impact does history have on your daily life. And in both of those fields, because philosophy and history are actually like kind of like weird cousins with each other, you have to make things relatable. And when you're talking about thoughts about the nature of existence and man's reality or humanity's relationship with humanity, or history, when you're talking about the context of how we got to where we are today, you need to, like, there is no way that you are not going to talk about political stuff. You're not going to talk about politics, because that is the thing. That is what these fields are about. You go into any academic philosophy class or any academic history class, everyone has got a political axe to grind. There's very few people, anyways, out there who are just like leaf collectors who are just like, I just really like, I don't know, like people who just like cataloging things. Those people typically become like curators and not historians, because, I mean, the past is just a collection of things that happened. A historian's job is to be the interpreter, the narrator that takes these things and turns it into narrative. And I had an entire, I did like, you know, half of a PhD, 3 years of a PhD on the subject about narrative and self-concept. And in my mind, history is about how we understand ourselves and how we understand where we got to today. And one of the most common things that I try to counter is that in history, the way that we are taught, typically, we are taught an extremely nationalist and like a history that comes from, like, with a militaristic, nation-focused background. And modern history is trying very hard to invert that thing. And so, in my mind, my stuff about history becoming, like, my quote-unquote history becoming political is a story of me as a historian trying to tell history stories in a way that is compelling to modern people and the experiences that they are having day to day. That's where I would stand. And I think that from the conversations I've had with Ollie, I think the same thing's happening. What's your favorite color and animal? I like purple. And animals. Ooh, I love dogs, even though that's a dumb answer. It's a simple answer. Animals. Animals. I don't know. Dogs are great. Dogs are wonderful buddies, and I kind of like. I also kind of have like a weird obsession with like eusocial insects, like bees and ants and things like that. All right. What do you think about the election fraud done by far-right Christian fundamentalist Trump supporter? I like literally just watched. That was on last week tonight on Sunday. And we just watched that before the stream, like not even 20. We finished like not even 20 minutes before the stream started. It seems like a pretty blatant case of electoral fraud. I don't see much of a controversy there. Like, I think he's going to go to jail. I hope so, anyway. If he gets away with it, then yeah, that's definitely a place that's definitely a place for outrage. Let's I'm gonna go through this in a video. So this is from 255. In a video about Paracon, radical reviewer said you need something like monetary compensation to get enough people to do terrible jobs, i.e., like giving enemas to the elderly. Agree or disagree? I don't know. I think that the people who do give enemas to the elderly today are not doing it because of the big bucks, I think. They're doing it because of they at least have chosen a vocation that involves service in that capacity. I don't... I mean, I think that some people... Like, let's just say it like this. For the example of giving enemas to the elderly, given that it's mostly probably done by, like, nurses, trust me, nurses are some of the most underpaid and overworked human beings on the planet. If it wasn't for the fact that they are literal heroes of human beings, they wouldn't be doing it. Nurses are like troops to me, and troops are not like troops to me. Nurses deserve medals for the work they do, and I think that, trust me, they're not doing it for the money. If you just talk to any nurse. Will you do a video on Rhodesia? Conrad Jeb, maybe. I'm doing a video on how bad apartheid was, probably sometime this year, depending upon Patreon stretch goals and stuff like that, so we'll see where that goes. If the apartheid video does well, I could see expanding that out into something like Rhodesia. Although Rhodesia is a little bit more obscure than South Africa, but it might be interesting. Especially if something comes up where it's relevant, or if I can find an interesting angle to make it relatable to modern human experiences. So, what's transhumanism all about, and can I be a robot? Is that an option? All right. Transhumanism is Leah Rose. Thank you. So, transhumanism is about the idea of us using technology and using technology basically to transition our biology into something that would be considered post-human, either through genetic manipulation, cybernetics, or mind uploading, or something like all of these different various things, to a point where we would not really be able to consider ourselves human anymore. Honestly, sometimes when I think about when I entertain the ideas, when I think about radical animal rights philosophy and some of that stuff, I've been listening to a lot of Mexi's podcast lately, the Vegan Vanguard, and when I think about radical animal rights issues, and I think about animal rights, we should be doing this. We should appreciate the personhood of animals. And then I'm like, well, why are animals special? What about plants? What about protists? Are we committing violence by having immune systems and that kind of thing? And so if you really want to be hardcore about it, if you want to take the concept of animal rights, the idea of extending personhood beyond the human species to its logical extreme to all life, then we really do need to find ways to transcend human biology so that we can separate ourselves from the ecosystem, because we are doing damage to it just by existing. That is some sort of weird techno-Jainism stuff, but you know. All right. So I do think that, there is the optimal state of us would be to actually be robots living not on Earth, which would be that's a very different world. The last time you talked about guns, germs, and steel, you said that the dominance of the West was due to colonism, not geography. But guns, germs, and steel is more about how colonialism happened that way around, not the other. Yes. Yup. But I think that the main, this is not just a Tristan criticism. This is a criticism that most historians have of Jared Diamond's work of Guns, Germs, and Steel, is that it is its lack of acknowledging cultural factors. The cultural factors of Abrahamic religion and the colonial mindset is not factored in. And if you look at his book, all of the factors that he gives to give Europeans all these advantages would have also extended to China, but China didn't colonize except for Vietnam. But they didn't you know, get on galleons and go across the Pacific and start like colonizing California. He doesn't really discuss that part. Because like at the dawn of the 16th century, you know, 1492, the end of the 1400s, like the Chinese were extremely technologically advanced compared to Europeans. All right. What do you think of the Black Panther's Vanguard of the Revolution? I thought it was fairly accurate as a documentary. Sadly, I haven't seen it. Okay. If you wanted to start a small business, this is from 255, say you wanted to say a fish and chip shop, would you feel morally obligated to make it a worker cooperative? At this point, yes. If I was going into business where I needed to have more than one person working on the project in order to make it go, I would suggest making it a cooperative. I don't think I could, as long as I am like a sole proprietor, and it's just me, and I occasionally hire somebody to do random tasks, that's a different thing. But at the moment, it's not where I am at right now. Probably not where I'll be for quite a while, if ever. I don't know if I would want Step Back to grow that large, where I have to hire people, because, I mean, I might, but that decision is not in front of me and has like no, I have no frame of reference for that. Like, there's no foreseeable future where that happens quite yet. What do you know about liberation? What do you know about liberation theology? I actually took a religion and politics class when I was doing my American Studies Masters with a professor who studies liberation theology. And he like would go to Nicaragua and talk to like some of the big people involved in the movement down there. I think that it is a perfect, I think that it's like the closest thing to true Christianity that I think exists in Christian circles. Because I do think that Christian messaging at its core can be very easily integrated with socialist ideas. And I think that liberation theology does that in a very elegant and wonderful way, and I wish that more people did it. Just don't do the Jonestown thing, please. Wouldn't seizing property be an act of violence and coercion, even if it isn't a physical act of violence? No. You don't hurt somebody by taking a house that they don't live in. You're just taking their assets away from them. But if you like, I would never kick somebody out of a house they lived in, but to take them out of the houses that they own but they don't live in, or take over the business that their employees do all the work for and they just sit back and reap the profits, hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's not an act of violence. That's an act of justice. It's just an act of giving things to the people who need it and away from the people who are using it to produce surplus labor from other people's labor. Surplus value from other people's labor. Maximilian. How would you fix the school education system? I would make it a lot less formal, a lot less... I would make it a whole lot less formal, a whole lot less focused on teaching people a very specific concept of, like, focusing on work and being a good employee. Definitely get away from things like teaching people to accept authority and follow orders. And honestly, I would like a project that was a lot more like, because, like, let's be honest, as somebody who has taught university, K through 12 does at most teach you how to read and write, and not write very well. Really, when you get to like first year university, you can't expect people to know any more than how to read and write. And even then, their writing is usually, like, the way that we teach writing in K through 12 is pretty bad. So, in my mind, as long as, you get your reading and your writing and your basic math down, I think that kids would do a lot better if they were free to follow their own curiosity, and teachers were more in a position to facilitate them advancing their curiosity. And having the resources there to make them go down the things that they are interested in. And a lot more group class projects, a lot more field trips, a lot more just interesting things, a lot more group activities. But also on top of that, a lot of times where kids are free to look and experiment and play. Because I also think that school provides the function of socializing kids, teaching kids how to behave in social situations. Kids need to learn how to treat other people without adult supervision. They need to learn, like, the school ground does teach you social dynamics, which you don't really learn anywhere else. All right. So 1 second. Love your videos. Oh, sirloin. I wasn't the person who banned you. And I am not going to take bribes so that you can be let back into the Discord. And the fact that you messaged me on every platform I have dozens of times asking to come back is not helping your case. All right. Did you see Christy Winters' anti-Bernie video? I saw the title and I did not watch it. I did have a conversation in the same vein this morning with Kelly on, I think that from what I could pick up was a similar topic. That Bernie did a bad last night at his town hall by basically not answering a woman's question and then getting the same question later from a dude and then answering that one. Don't mass dislike Christy Winters. Christy Winters gets enough shit. She's fine. Don't bother her. She's good people. We have serious disagreements about politics, but she's not a bad person. She's, in my mind, just misguided. But either way, I would say, all right, so let's yeah, that was not a good moment for Bernie, that is for sure. He definitely needs to learn how to talk to people, especially with the, like, these questions about, he definitely needs to have like a smart, he definitely needs to have a smarter approach to these two people asking him questions about these issues, because he's never had to do it all that much when you're just like, mayor of a city or a senator of a state where you're going to win. And when you are dealing with the presidency, like, even though it shouldn't be this way, because Americans are so unlike other countries, in America, in American presidential politics, it's not enough to have the best positions and to have the best policies, but you have to basically also be a mascot, because American politics is a lot more driven by emotion and narrative and, yes, we can, and these kinds of things. And the substance of politicians is much less emphasized in these things. And I think, first of all, it does imply that Sanders has got to really realize that he's got some generational issues when it comes to his messaging. You have to realize that this stuff matters. You can't just politician away things. And I think that he knows that the liberal wing of the Democratic Party are going to push this story about the sexual harassment that occurred in his campaign in 2016, because it's been in the news a lot, and he needs to get a better response, and he definitely needs to not do what he did. I think that was a whoopsie doodle on his part, and I really hope that he doesn't do that again. I hope that he learns from this, like he did when the Black Lives Matter activists charged his platform when he was speaking last time around, and then he hired Black Lives Matter activists onto his campaign so that he could improve his platform. And I hope that this incident does the same to him, and if he gets defensive, I will be disappointed in him. Someone was like, is Canadian politics based on emotion like the fear of the United States? It's getting there, but the British system, where like everyone just kind of hates all of their politicians and doesn't like treats them like these are just people who are just doing a job, and they just got to like do this stupid thing, and their time in the public just makes you hate them for like the various terrible things they do, and then you just dump them for someone else. Like that's the British way of doing politics, and I wish that we were just like treating politicians the ways that we treated like hiring people for a job and being like, well, you've done this, 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 and this. All right, I would like to see some of that in this organization. Go for it. And yeah. Some random geek. Why do you unlisted Step Back Tonight? Do you have a live stream channel with the past live streams? Jack Saints does that. I don't do that just because, I don't know, I don't think it's a really great thing to do. I think that I have, like, the videos do go unlisted after the streams. The main reason is because otherwise it would clog my feed. It would make my feed unwatchable, or it wouldn't make my, if you went to like the videos tab of my channel, it would make it like annoying. So what I do instead is I have playlists. So if you go to the playlist part of my channel, you'll find Step Back Tonight, and all of my streams are on playlists, and you can watch them with that. Do you consider Pol Pot a communist? I mean, he definitely thought he was. I don't know. What do you think of the Finnish opinion on the Finnish Bolshevik? I don't really know him. I haven't heard good things. What is a political reactionary? Political reactionary is the politics of anger and resentment that come from people like losing their status or having to share, like upsetting the status quo of society. And so if you are part of a privileged elite, like say like a cisgendered heterosexual white dude, and then issues of racial, progress and racial justice happens, and that makes you feel threatened, and you react by, attacking civil rights activists, that makes you a reactionary. That's more or less, you're reacting to a change in society rather than having a position of your own. Do you like the mechanical keyboard better? As yet to be seen. I think it feels better for typing. I have to do some some more writing with it. I have a couple scripts I'm going to write in the next couple weeks, so I'll get a lot more of an idea at that point. But yeah, so far I like it. The last keyboard, the space bar wasn't working so great, so it's nice to just have a new keyboard. I don't know about mechanical keyboards yet, but I like the sounds they make. I've heard nothing but good things about mechanical keyboards, so I'm going to keep it going. I do have all of your questions written down, by the way. I'm not... Like, I know some people are, like, repeating questions and think I'm not getting to them. I'm getting to these questions. It's just that I'm very far behind because you guys... I'm one person, and you are... How many are there? I am but one human who can only answer questions at a certain pace, and there are 57 of you. 56. So, you know, I can only go so fast. Do you like the mechanical keyboard better? You already answered that. Is shit posting Praxis? It can be. It's pretty fun. Can you judge art objectively, or is all art criticism subjective? It depends upon what you call art criticism. Like, there is definitely, like... some ways you can do a little bit of art. Maybe it's not art criticism, it's basically just art history. Like, I'm thinking, like, understanding the context of where the art piece came from. That's more, and, like, trying to figure out, like, technique and things like that. But that's really not very often done. That's not really art criticism. Art criticism is about, like, whether something was effective at what it did or not. And that really is something that is subjective. And reading art criticism would really come down to your affiliation with the taste of the critic. Because, like, yeah, everything that makes me think that... Maybe everything that makes me think of, like, an objective art criticism is more art history. Do you give priority immediately to Jonathan Chavez's super chat question? Do you care more about fan questions if they give you money? If so, why give priority to fans who give super chats over us Patreon contributors? I've given you a continuing commitment, not just thrown you a few dollars. I know. I appreciate that, $2.55. I do. I am going by heuristics. I don't know. I know that you are a patron. I do not know who else is a patron. But in this moment, like, the thing is, like, I get to people's questions. It's just that, yeah, super chats are just, like, a way for me to, if you want your question answered right this minute, like, okay. I like, and also, like, it's a night, like, they just did something nice, and I thought that I would do something, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest. I just kind of write the questions down, and then if I see a big glowing thing on my screen that asks me a question, then I'm like, oh, this person just gave me money to ask this question. Okay. I apologize. It wasn't meant as a slight against the patrons who are literally the lifeblood of this channel, without which I would literally be screwed. So please do not take that as any sort of sign of disrespect. Do you think I'm a troll, Argos? I don't know. I don't watch you all the times of the day. All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your favorite color of the alphabet? 6. Thoughts on Michael Cohen's hearing tomorrow? Will it destroy Drumpf? I mean, like I said, I've been wanting to make a video on the, I've been wanting to make a video on the whole Russia thing. And I know that the second I do it, I'm going to get so much flack because I'm going to get shit for not, for either not taking Russia seriously enough or taking Russia too seriously, because left-wing circles are very up there. It's very this or that when it comes to Russia. And I have more of a position where I don't think nothing happened, but I'm definitely not like a Rachel Maddow who has basically, become like QAnon, like that thinks that like this is like going to be like the biggest, this is going to be the biggest scandal in American history. But I do think that there is a lot of people who want to dismiss the Russia angle, dismiss what Russia did, and like to dismiss that Russia did do pretty like intense, in messing around with elections, something that America has done way more of, but but Russia did. It does seem Russia did at least try to do it. How effective they were and how widespread it was is still kind of vague, but they did at least try something. And I would love to break it down because it's all coming out in this very slow thing, because the FBI definitely has a media strategy surrounded. They have a media strategy surrounding this whole thing. But honestly, in my mind, it's a thing that is interesting to investigate. It is interesting to figure out where the holes in the American democratic process are in order to address them. I know that's a bit of a pipe dream, but I'm not convinced that there's going to be this one thing that comes down from the Mueller office that's going to turn everyone against Trump, and this is like going to be the thing that takes him down. Honestly, I think that if they really wanted something like that, they should probably investigate Trump's financial dealings in New York City, because you don't spend that much time with that much money in New York City and not have mob connections. And so I think that would be something to be following up. And there was I think it was a Belgian journalist who at least got a lot of hints that like Trump had like links with organized crime, but that's not something that everybody's interested in. I think this Russia, it's a good story, and I do think that there are people who are in the DNC's world who they want this story. They want Russia to be bigger than it is, because they want to say that it wasn't the Democrats' fault. It wasn't poor messaging. It wasn't being out of touch. It wasn't neoliberalism that cost them 2016, but it was this like story about Russian influence. And then you've got like people on kind of the Glenn Greenwald side of the spectrum who want to go down the other angle, and they want to say they want to emphasize that point that the Democrats messed up, and in doing so they are dismissing and minimizing all of the Russia stuff and saying nothing happened. There's no evidence, even though there's nothing we can go on. Every single source is untrustworthy. And I think that there's problems in that too. And I'm really starting to get frustrated with like the sort of RT Glenn Greenwald part of the left that is trying to kind of like has almost like a conspiracy mindset. But I do think that this is a situation. I hate to say that the answer's in the middle, because I do think it leans more on I think it's more overblown than it is a serious issue. But it is something, I do think that it is something worth investigating and something worth talking about, because Russia's interference with the Russia's interference with the election even if it wasn't super effective, like there's some stuff that like shows that their fake news like Facebook blitz really only impacted like baby boomers and might not have had the impact that they think they wanted to. But in my opinion, that this is the beginning of such a process, not the end of such a process. And if we want to safeguard elections against influence peddling like this, we need to figure out how it works and where it does work and where it doesn't work, so that we can, safeguard and do stuff, and not just use preventing influencing in a way to just dismiss criticism. I think that there's a lot of unpacking and discussing that needs to happen, and I think that dismissing it out of hand when this is like a thing that Russia has done in other countries' elections before and has done it after the 2016 election as well, that this is something that you shouldn't undersell. This is Russia's geopolitical strategy, given that they don't have the same resources and military might as the United States. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to sow discord in the West, and we need to figure out how it works. Have a good night, Ina. All right. Are you a socialist because you think other forms of organizing society can't work long term, or is it that you think even if they could, they're less ethical than socialism? I think socialism is the most just system of distributing resources and running an economy. And I also think that it is the most responsive to, it is the most stable, it is the most responsive to things like climate change and trying to focus on getting certain things done. I think that a socialist economy will better handle things like climate change, and so I think it's a yes on both fronts. I think that we have had, this is going to sound super Marxist, but we've had a dynamic of people, of like various iterations of people who work and people who reap the rewards of other people's work. Sometimes they were called aristocrats, sometimes they were called entrepreneurs, but they've always been a class of people who have used the fact that property is considered a private thing to exploit other people's labor for their own gain. And socialism is breaking that cycle and moving to something where everybody owns the products of their own labor. And I think that we're very, very conditioned in a capitalist mindset that we don't realize just how much value we produce that is taken to make other people rich. Think about things like how much rent you pay. Think about things like your how much money's worth of like product that you make in a day working, or how much money you've made. And so in my mind, that's to quote a bank, ironically, you're richer than you think. And I think that socialism is the way that everybody will receive the things that we need. Like, if you're in a group of 5 people at dinner, or if you're at a group of 5 people and you're stranded on an island, you're not going to unevenly distribute resources. You're going to distribute resources the ways that people need them. And I'm just applying that general principle to all of us, because we're all on the same team and nobody is more or less deserving of the necessities of life than others. Even the luxuries of life. So this question comes from Alfonso Oliveira. Tristan watches John Oliver. Step Back is canceled, folks. Hey. John Oliver's okay. He was his Venezuela piece was not great, but most of the time it's pretty good stuff. Sheds a lot of light on class issues, which a lot of American political shows don't, and does some really good stuff about scams and sort of predatory capitalism that a lot of, like, as far as like normie political talk shows go, it is the best one, in my opinion. Yeah, it's not like, it's not gritty talking about expropriating the means of production from the proletariat on HBO every night, but it's as good as, it's all right. It does good. It's a good show. I learn stuff when I watch it, especially about stuff like, I think that the show is at its best when it's doing stuff on like payday loans and multi-level marketing, or as the most recent episode did a really good one on the industry of psychics and how they prey on, like, how mediums prey on grieving people in order to exploit their money. And I think that, like, that's when the show is doing really great. And I think that it should do more of that. Sometimes they hit a flat note, like with the Venezuela one. That's the one that I think anybody who doesn't watch the show knows, because it was a pretty unnuanced and pretty bad take on Venezuela. But that's one bad take, and trust me, as far as, like, typical, as far as, like, your very as far as your, like, widespread appeal political shows go, it's the best. It's in my opinion the best one. All right. Do you think that this is from Gad Yariv? Oh my! So all the people who are like, "Oh man, it's so late in Europe." Gad Yariv lives in Israel, so for Gad Yariv, it is like it's almost so late it's early. So, holy moly! Okay. Do you think that the post-Trump wall American right is going to revive Manifest Destiny? Inspiration for the wall was Israel's wall. Is making Mexico into the occupied territories next? Oh man, that is giving me some really creepy vibes of like the Knights of the Golden Circle, which was this pro-slavery organization that basically, like, if you think, like, it was in the lead up to the Civil War, and in the early 1800s, a lot of the Caribbean and like Latin America was still basically run by like a white elite with a lot of slavery, and they wanted to create this like circle of slave powers all the way like through that sort of like down through Mexico into like to South America. This is sort of, for anybody, I know there's a lot of you who are fans of alternate history, and in a lot of, like, Confederates win the Civil War stories, this usually comes up with, like, what's it called? Like, that usually comes up with, oh man, my brain completely paused. What was I talking about? Holy moly. Let me just, I am really sorry. I completely lost my train of thought. Yes. Oh, the Knights of the Golden Circle. So there's like, yeah, in alternate history stories, when the Confederates win, sometimes they show stories of the Confederacy invading northern Mexico and taking Cuba and stuff like that, which, like, I don't think the Confederacy would have had the resources to do that. I do think that a lot of like Confederacy wins the Civil War things. How powerful the Confederacy is after the Civil War is usually like the biggest like fantasy trip that just shows they're totally standing like this apartheid slave state in like a really gross way, because the Confederacy, even if they won the American Civil War, and by win the American Civil War meant making the United States just give up on the South, they would have been like one of the poorest countries like ever. That's a different story. But to take it back to Gaduri's question about turning Mexico into the occupied territories, I don't think so. I think that like there's not, I don't know, I don't think that it's the same mindset. I think there's some similarities and there's some dissimilarities. The idea that these are a undeserving people that they need to oppress and keep, like that need to be oppressed, they need to be under control, and if anything, maybe like, you know, taken out. That mentality that like the far right, the pro-wall people are really advocating for, definitely jives with a lot of the ways that Israeli people are, especially like white Israelis, are sort of indoctrinated to think about the indigenous people of the country. But honestly, I think that you would get more juice out of thinking in terms of like the American concept of the indigenous American, because a lot of the same processes that are happening with like settlements in the West Bank and the systematic dehumanization, taking small threats and exploding them into big threats to justify violent incursions into another nation's sovereign territory, that is right out of both the American expansion playbook and the current way that Israel approaches Palestine. And yeah, I don't think that like there's this concept of turning Mexico into like a West Bank that Americans would settle into, but because I think that idea is very well dead in America. Like the whole closing of the frontier, like Americans don't really think like they're frontiers people anymore as much as they like to think they do. I don't see Americans like setting up camp south of the border and just saying, this is America now. What do you mean? I mean, it's not they have done that to Mexico before. That's how they got Texas and like all of the states they took in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, but still, I think that is a symbol of an older America, not a newer America. America's colonization now is a lot more about controlling the means of production and making sure that American financial interests, like they go to countries and they don't have to worry about governing them. They don't have to worry about suppressing them and controlling the people. They just empower a few people there and get them to oppress their own people, and then just make sure that whoever they put in charge puts in like, you know, lets the American corporations come in and take them out. That's why like America committed like a horrible like long-term almost ethnic cleansing in like Central America in order to like make a fruit company happy. So like this is the par for the course. That's more the post like World War II idea of, well, that was pre-World War II, but like that's more of like the modern American strategy for expanding. All right. Argos Panoptes, thoughts on Mark's anime and Big Joel's Anita video getting taken down by Sargonites. Well, I could say I have not seen the Mark's anime. I think it's very memeable. I think that makes me happy. And as far as Big Joel's Anita Sarkeesian video, I was actually watching it right until the start of the stream. That's why anybody who's here from the beginning of the stream knows that I started like maybe about 30 seconds late, and it's because I was watching the video. And I think that says something, because this is not the first time this happens. So I find that it's funny that the Sargonites do this, because they know over and over again that this doesn't work. Like, the last time that there was a really big video critical of the right that got mass flagged and then taken down, and then the left-wing community, like, mirrored their video and got a lot of attention, it basically created the channel Three Arrows. Like, it flung Three Arrows from being an obscure channel no one had heard of to one of the biggest left-tube channels around. And that is, like... I think that's like a... that says a lot. I think that they are... It's sort of like what I was talking about with violence. Like, it just blows up it just raises the platform of the people that they target. And now Big Joel is going to be probably one of the biggest left tubers, probably going to have 100,000 subscribers at some point now, if he hadn't already. And now it's just done. Like, that just happened now, because he's going to get his video back, and then it's going to keep going on. And so there you go. I feel like that's just going to happen. Like, it doesn't get them. Three Arrows is leftist. I thought it was rightist through the name. No, Three Arrows is an anti-fascist history channel. It is a channel specifically about countering historical claims of the far right. And he's branched out since, but that was like the main thing that that Three Arrows was about, was taking historical claims by the far right and debunking them. If you like Step Back, you will like Three Arrows. Three Arrows is very much like a channel like Step Back, in the sense of like riding the line of history and activism. Although I will say Three Arrows has branched out a little bit, and I think in good ways. Three Arrows has a really good grasp of German history and German politics. He lives in Germany. And I think that for the stuff he covers, he does a really good job. Three Arrows is the Three Arrows symbol is a anti-fascist symbol, if I remember correctly. I don't know if it's probably not necessarily a socialist symbol, but it is an anti-fascist symbol. So yeah, I look forward to Big Joel getting a huge amount of following from this video, and the Sargonites forever still not succeeding. What I think is more insidious is now with that new that he's advocating for people to... Are we doing Beneath story or no? I always try to... I will... You guys ask so many good questions. If I don't get to it, I'll do it next week. How about that? So... Let's see. Three arrow symbols: anti-Nazi, anti-monarchist, and anti-one other group. Okay, I did not know that. Yeah, so I do think that, like, you undo... The one thing I think is more insidious is that if the Sargonites learn that with the new Twitter policy, where they're going to demonetize videos based on the comments alone, or that nasty comments can ruin can actually get a video demonetized, I think that one of the things that they can do is push this is YouTube policy. So basically, like, Sargon is now advocating that people bomb videos they don't like with negative comments, and then sort of bring it back. All right, Sirloin, I will talk to my moderators in Discord and find out what happened, and we will talk about it. Anyways, so I think that Sargon targeting videos get demonetized might be more of a problem, although that's not going to take the video down. It will make the videos less profitable, but already leftist videos get demonetized a lot and they don't produce a lot of ad revenue. So I think it's going to be very, you know, it's going to be very limited in its capacity, because leftist YouTubers don't get a lot of videos demonetized and their ad rates are much lower than your typical YouTube channel. I should know. So things like Patreon and sponsorships are a very big deal, and super chats. So please support your local leftist YouTubers. If not, I mean, it'd be great if it was me, but honestly, anybody who you believe in their message, you should definitely do it if you can, because this is because AdSense, like, they would rather run PragerU ads on Sargon videos for higher CPMs than, like, you know, what we're doing. All right. Where are we? Oh, Ina, you've gone to bed. But Ina, if you're around, we'll answer your question. I'll do it a little quick. Sam Random Geek, you signed up through Scaleshare through my link. Thank you. Things like that. When someone does a sponsorship and you sign up for it, that helps a lot, like a lot, because that sends a signal to the sponsor that their sponsorship worked, and so it means more sponsorships. Like the response on the AIDS video resulted in me getting 3 more of them. And that is going to be a significant change in my life. So thank you. All right. Shouldn't we instead embrace anti-civ thought and instead of separate humans from nature, break down the dominance over it and work a symbolic relationship with the rest of the world? That would be nicer. I do think, though, like, even if you want to go like super philosophical about radical non-interference and non-violence against our own against other living entities, we would need to get ourselves to a position where, because, like, if you're going to extend personhood to animals, like, if you want to really play with this idea and really expand it out philosophically, at some point you're going to have to extend it to plants, and then at some point you're going to have to expand it to, like, protists and things like that, like things that our immune system fights. And at many points your body is committing violence against microscopic creatures all the time, and really the only way to not be doing some act of violence is to separate from the system altogether. But I know that is extremely, that is like I think I even mentioned, that's like pushing the idea to its radical extreme. I do think that still doing more would be better. So I still think that, you know, if we were all vegans using renewable energy and making sure lots of places could grow fallow, I think that we would that would make things a lot better. Yeah. Have you heard about the recent clashes between India and Pakistan? Yes, Comrade Jeb, I have. I got some questions about that. From what I got worried when I first heard about it, because I was like, aren't Pakistan and India two countries that have nuclear weapons basically pointed at each other with a hair trigger? But the I then looked up an Indian Marxist academic that I follow on Twitter named Vijay Prashad, and he knows way more than I do about what's going on, and he basically just called it a performative measure done from Mahendra Modi to start his re-election campaign. And like, I was like, isn't like, so like, it seems like the people who know more about this than I do are not freaking out about nuclear holocaust. So I guess at the moment we should not worry, or at least not be worried about like the end of the world. You should worry about the deaths of those poor Pakistani people who are being killed by Indian bombs. But it could definitely get worse. Opino pri Esperanto, suni atingos la finan venkon. So that's from Fidi, and that was in the language Esperanto. I have a good night, Graham. I will say to you, if you're still in the chat, that I have a pretty boring opinion about Esperanto, which is I think you probably, as somebody who apparently speaks Esperanto to some degree, yeah, Esperanto is a really great idea, and I really like it, and I really wish that we could get people on board for it, because the idea of having a universal second language would be awesome, but you have to get kind of a critical mass of users on board for that, and it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. But it's a great idea. I really like the idea of it. It's a little bit Eurocentric, so we need to, tweak it in that way, but we can do that. Do you think it's wrong to adopt an animal? No. I have 2 cats. Trust me, in like animal rights circles, this is like a thing that people talk about, and I will say I do not live up to my ideal self. I'm also not vegan. If I were living in full accordance with my own ideals, I would be vegan, but I am not. And it is very much me capitulating to like base urges and shitty parts of myself that I'm not proud of. All right. And I have 2 cats, and I love them. Opinion on Pancho Villa? I actually don't know a whole lot about Pancho Villa. We live in a society, but yet what is a society? I don't even know what it... I gotta think of a funny answer to that. I'm not really good at the we live in a society joke. I don't know. Yeah, it's not really a vegan thing to be against the adoption of pets. That's more of an like radical animal rights thing. Because being vegan is one thing, but animal rights, like being an animal rights, like a very heavy animal rights advocate, some are against the having of pets, sort of in the same way that they are against the having of of circuses and things like that. That it is taking an animal out of the habitat it wants to live in and getting it a life of servitude. Although with my cats, who's serving who really? But either way, I think that I think that it's fine. I think that and that we castrate these animals and then we keep them as like little things that can't really live out their lives. I think that these things are like, in my mind, they are interesting things to think about. I have not really come down how strong I feel about this stuff, and I haven't really come to a situation that I feel satisfied with. It's something that I've been thinking about a little bit more lately as I listen to more of the Vegan Vanguard, which is Mexi's podcast. But it's not something that I've like developed a strong opinion on yet. Are school uniforms oppressive? Yes. Did you hear about one of our senators from here in Texas directly quoting Mussolini on Twitter? I heard of it. I heard about it. That's super messed up that a Texas senator is quoting Mussolini. I think there's a really awesome Virginian politician, a state politician that everybody loves. He's very memeable. He's like a redheaded guy. I think that I saw him tweet about it. All right. Do you think people can't read or write good until they get to university? Do you not worry it's exclusionary to say people who haven't been to uni can't present their ideas properly? I don't think it's exclusionary. What I'm saying is that the public education system, at least the public education system in Canada, does a very poor job at teaching people how to write well and how to express their ideas well. Like those, like writing and speaking and presenting ideas are not just things that you're just naturally good or bad at. It's something that you have to work on. It's a skill you have to develop. Writing, like the issue I have is that the way that high schools teach writing and the way that writing actually works are very different from each other. And high school teaches you how to write extremely bad essays. And so when you go to your first year of university, you learn very fast that you have very poor writing skills, and you have to, like a lot of students hit a brick wall as soon as they get to university, and they have to completely change things around. Are there people who don't go to university who learn to write very well? Yes. That's like that. Yeah. There are people who don't go to university who have a great grasp of quantum physics. Like there are people who learn skills outside of school. It's just that I think that public education just does them a disservice in the way that they teach writing. All right. Hello, William Kearney Richardson. Welcome to the chat. Are you familiar with Tim Pool? No, I am not. Did you know in the 70s and until the 90s, South Yemen was an independent socialist country? No, I did not know that. That's pretty cool, only bro. What did Sirlin Device do? I'm not going to get into that. That's not nice to do. Isaac M. Hey, Tristan, have you seen any movies lately with religious themes? And do you have any thoughts on them? The most recent movie I watched was Fiddler on the Roof, which is very much about Judaism, and is about, like, we had a discussion after the movie about how even the metaphor of the Fiddler on the Roof, about playing this song and keeping your balance while knowing at any, like, you know, keeping your song going while at any moment knowing that you could fall off the roof and die, and like that, like, that says so much to, like, the Jewish self-concept. As I was telling you guys, like, narratives are really important for how we understand ourselves. I said it in the Paris Commune video that the story is, like, identity is the stories we tell about ourselves and the stories that we tell about others. And the idea of the Jewish self-concept as the identity of being the people who have been pushed out of one place, pushed out of another place, and always knowing that, like, somewhere you will have somebody who will want to oppress you and kick you out, and that you move to the next place and you keep thriving, you keep going on. You just, like, life is about keeping on. And I think that is a powerful narrative in Jewish identity. And I mean, I can't speak to it too much because I'm not Jewish, but I do think that you see a lot of those themes in things like Fiddler on the Roof, and I think that it's really interesting. And I think that if somebody hasn't, if there's someone in the chat who hasn't seen Fiddler on the Roof, you should watch it. It's good. It is, it slaps. The music's really good. It's an interesting story. And I would love to... You're new to the channel, River. Well, welcome to the channel. I'm happy that you're here, River Ransom. I do think of Fiddler on the Roof... I love musicals, and I think that Fiddler on the Roof is one of the better ones. So you should check it out. It's good. It also takes place during the pogrom period in Russia, in the Russian Empire. So that's pretty cool, too. I mean, it's not. The pogroms are terrible. But you get to take a look into it. And, by the way, my wife thinks that I would be a very good Tevye if I ever got to play the role. Please say whether you agree or disagree in the chat. The blatantly communist character is pretty great, who ends up, like, sent into, like, a czarist gulag in Siberia, and then the second daughter, like, moves to like Siberia in order to be with him. It's a great slice of life of like what it was like to be around at the like the sort of dawn of the 20th century in Russia as Jewish people. That's the main character, right? Yes, yeah. Tevye is the main character. Is the dad. Is PBS NewsHour a trustworthy source? If not, what American news stations can be trusted with the least biased advice? Actually, I think PBS is pretty good. PBS, despite getting government money, tends to be pretty PBS's Frontline is a really good. It's just really good. Like, it's really good investigative journalism. Like, PBS keeps away from like having like opinion things, and they're just reporters, and their reporting is decent. Like, it's good. It's I feel like it's a lot better than like. I feel like PBS is in a lot better position to make better news than say like CBC or like CBC or wait, you guys don't have CBC in America. Like better than like CNN or Fox or any of those, because they're not going to like ban PBS from like the White House press corps. So PBS is a lot like there's less of like the access journalism stuff. I think that is really that I think that they don't have to worry about as much, and so they can say a lot more and they can be more critical than say like CNN, because they could just be like, you know, they could just refuse to do interviews with them. I also think that you should probably like I think that Democracy Now! Is a pretty decent, like if you're looking for like straight up news, like if you're not looking for like, you know, a lot of like corporate news is like now it's like all editorial, but like if you're looking for like straight up good reporting, Democracy Now! Is pretty good at just reporting. All right. Bumby, if Russia did manage to influence people through social media, would that what would be the solution? That's a good question. I think that's why we should look into it and do research to see if we can find out. I think it will have to be more. I always find that like saying education is it always feels like a cop out, but I do think that getting people to understand the idea of like political gaslighting and influence and things like that, I think media literacy is a skill that that is woefully undertaught and woefully underappreciated, and we need to get more into that, because it's just getting harder and harder to figure out what is and isn't. I mean, everything is influence peddling in one way or another, but what is like targeted state propaganda campaigns, that is getting harder and harder to tell, and so it'd be good to work on as a skill. Have you ever watched Empire Files, and if yes, do you see it as a good source? Yeah, I mean, okay. I think that sometimes it gets a little conspiratorial, but like it's still fine. I think that's that's not so much Abby Martin as it is her brother, who's a little bit more conspiracy minded than she is. I think that the reporting is good. I think that they are going into like Abby Martin and the Empire Files team are looking into areas and subjects that you're not going to get through a lot of corporate news sources. And so I think that Empire Files gives you a lot of views and reporting and perspective that you're not going to get in a lot of other places. And I think that it does a really valuable service for that. As somebody who has a particular bugbear about 9/11 truthers, I'm not like ecstatic that Abby Martin was a 9/11 truther for a long time, but you know, I'm willing to forgive. And so, you know, I think I listened to she did an interview with Mexi on Empire Files, and it was probably one of the most like emotionally riveting discussions of the horrible stuff that's going on in Palestine that I've ever seen. And I think that it's if you listen to one episode of the Vegan Vanguard, you should listen to the episode with Abby Martin, because it is if you don't tear up, you will be. I would be surprised, because it's intense. But yeah, I've watched all of Empire Files. Empire Files is pretty good. How did you come to your political beliefs? 1 through 8 is asking this. I came to my political beliefs via... how would I say? I started off as, like, even at a young age, I was an NDP supporter, which in Canada is like the Social Democratic Party. So I've always been left of center. Then I think there are 2 things that had the biggest influence on shaping my political opinions. And thing 1 was learning about socialism and communism in history class in 10th grade when we were covering the First World War. I had a teacher who was like basically like talking about like how bad communism was, and she was like, I remember, because she was just like, it's this idea that everybody is equal and that we should all give according to our ability and receive according to our needs. And I was just like, that sounds awesome. And her response was, doesn't that sound terrible? And I was just like, no, actually, I didn't say it in class because I was afraid, because, even this would have been like 2002 about. So even like, because I was like in 10th grade. So maybe it was about 2000. No, that would have been 2003 or 2004. So even like, 15 years ago now, saying that you were a socialist or being into socialism was pretty uncouth. And I remember my mom even said once that, my mom once said, and then she never followed up with when I was a kid, that if I became a communist, that I would be kicked out of the house and I wouldn't be allowed home. Then I became a communist and she didn't kick me out, so I called her bluff and I won. But I remember being like, yeah, like I remember not really bringing it up. And then once I got online and my brain turned to garbage by spending too much time on the internet, because there's no YouTube at this time, that like I just kind of didn't. I just kind of like, got more lefty. Then when I got into YouTube around 2006, 2007 is when I got into YouTube. And I started hearing more and more radical people talking. I remember that there was a time when the only anarchists on YouTube were like Stefan Molyneux and like other people like that. And I remember being like, oh, anarchism is like this super capitalist right-wing ideology. And I had questions about it. I was never on board with it. I always thought like this is like, I remember my first idea of like anarchism is this like is ANCAPs basically. And I was like, that's dumb. But then I can't remember if this is the part where it's like, I think around like, I was still like a leftist. I was on the internet and I knew all these people. And then I feel like in like 2009, I got to a point where I was like, where like kind of like the state just broke for me. I was like, there's no way, like basically sometime around when Obama was watering down the the AHA, or what's it called? The ACA, whatever, the Obamacare Act. And I was just like, oh no, voting doesn't do anything. Okay. And so I was just like, and I was like, okay, well, maybe there's got to be a way that you can be like an anarchist and not believe in capitalism. That has to be a thing, right? And I like Googled around, I looked it up, and then I found out about like, ANCOMs and actual anarchism. And I came out more as an anarchist, and I was more of an ANCOM and an ANSIN in the early days, and I've sort of expanded out from there. I became a pacifist. I think pacifism is more of a thing that I married to my anarchism, because I've always been anti-war, and I kind of cut my political teeth being an anti-Bush, anti-Iraq war person. So pacifism met anarchism, and then I kind of just became me. So, 2009, I was 21 or 20, depending upon whether it was before or after November. I can't remember. Okay. 255. I watched a documentary about the KKK. They interviewed a guy who dressed up his 4-year-old kid in a Klan getup. Do you think that raising your kid to be a bigot is a form of child abuse? Yeah. Bigotry is a form of self-abuse. Doing it to others is a form of abuse. You're hurting you're hurting yourself. You're becoming a hateful person. In 2009, I turned 21. What will India politically be in 20 years? I don't know. India's in a weird place because they're dealing with the Islamophobia that's spreading around the world is getting really virulent in India. And the rise of Hindu nationalism is a thing that is like the radical nationalist right. Like, there's a lot of Muslims that live in India, and when Muslim-Hindu relations are bad, lots of people have died in the past. I would rather that did not happen. But yeah, that'd be tough. Okay. Would you consider the Irish potato famine a genocide? Kind of. It's a lot to unpack because the potato famine was a whole thing, but like there was a lot of like explicit English inaction that caused a lot of Irish people to die, and that is definitely. And they knew that lots of Irish people would die if they didn't do anything, and they did nothing. And so, if that's not a genocide, I don't know what is. You could be, you could split hairs and talk about whether it was like an intentional act to eradicate Irish people from the planet, but that's a different thing. It is a genocide, but not like in the very strict definition, I guess. All right. Have you heard about Ben Shapiro and his master's degree in trash talking? I know that he's said some dumb stuff. I don't really know too much about Ben Shapiro. I know that he like says facts don't care about your feelings, and that he says dumb right-wing stuff, and then he like did a speech at an anti-abortion rally, and he treated it like an episode of his podcast, including having a sponsorship break in the middle of his keynote address. But he seems like he's like the guy who's always like, debate me. And I was like, I don't know. Like, he just doesn't seem interesting to me. I'm not one of these people who spends a lot of my energy thinking about what right-wing people say, because I'm not going to be the person that talks them away from this. I'm not going to be the person that talks them out of being right wing. That's something that they have to come to on their own. I'm also not going to be the person who, like, in my mind, radicalizing liberals is the reason that I find them so frustrating is because they're so close, and I think that they are savable, but conservatives, I think they've got a longer way to go. And so I don't know. Like, I feel like even talking about Ben Shapiro is giving him more influence than I care to give him, and I'd rather just not pay attention to him. When Chelsea Manning came out as trans, I was amongst the people who thought Bradley was just trying to troll people from prison. When do I get to stop feeling guilty about that? Hey, well, 255. Trust me, everybody, I'm going to say that to everyone, everybody had shitty oppressive opinions in the past. and we all have to make peace that, yeah, that was something we thought. That was something that we thought in the past, and it's not something we think anymore. And we're trying to make the world a better place for everybody who's here, no matter what, no matter whether they're, no matter their sexual orientation, gender identity, anything. And yeah, we all grow up in different ways and different speeds, but you gotta forgive yourself. Like there's no value in just feeling bad. I mean, I'll share some of them. I'll even say it. Like when I didn't understand trans people. I had no issues. I didn't really know anything until one of my roommates came out to me, and everything changed. And she completely changed my thinking on all sorts of stuff. Like I didn't have any hate. I just didn't think about trans issues at all. And realizing that these are people who suffer so much bigotry and so much oppression. And then as I've grown up and I've gotten to know more amazing, trans spirits out there who have been brilliant, wonderful people that have made my life a lot better. And I had to shape. I think that the better story would be that circa 2008, 2009, probably from 2008 to 2010 or 11, I was a shitty internet skeptic who was definitely Islamophobic. And I hate that was a part of who I was. It is a thing that I still really just feel terrible about things that I thought in the past. Now, luckily, I don't think I was ever in a situation where I treated anybody particularly terribly. But when I went to university and I spent time with a close friend of mine at the time, we never grew apart. She went to go teach in Morocco and then went to grad school in the UK. So I haven't seen her since. But a Muslim woman became a really close friend of mine when I was in undergrad, and I spent a lot of time with her. We learned a lot. I learned a whole lot about Islam, about faith, about North African cooking, how to use a pressure cooker properly. Solidarity from DC. Thank you, Daniel. And she was possibly the most pure, kind soul I'd ever met, who would never have said a bad word about anybody ever. And I just, it broke me. And as I got older, I changed. I changed so much that when I went to grad school, I wrote my master's thesis on Islamophobia. And as you probably would guess, there's a not so subtle theme on a lot of videos on my channel about about plurality and embracing people who are different from yourself, and especially themes to do with Islamophobia. And I just felt, I turned things around. I try not to let that haunt me, and I try to make things better, try to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, because nothing about stewing about my past is going to make anything that I did in the past any better. And so, yeah, just be part of the solution and not part of the problem, and realize you fucked up, and vow to be better. If you can just do that every day, you'll be all right. And also, if you have a group of people that you have made decisions about what they're like in your head and you haven't listened to them, you should listen to them, because we all people. Would you consider not vaccinating your kids' child abuse and anti-vaxxers child abusers? Pretty damn close, yeah. The whole recent uptick in anti-vax stuff is getting pretty messed up. You helped me overcome many of my more rightist phases. Your video on the yellow vest was awesome. Citizen Fofi Hassel, thank you very much for that. It really makes me happy when I hear people say things like that. I'm glad that I was able to give you a hand on your intellectual journey. I hope that you continue to grow and learn, and I'm glad that I was able to give you a hand. Okay, let's move. There's a lot of questions, and we're in the last hour, so I guess Undertale is not going to happen. Sorry, friends. I guess I'll have to do that next week. Isn't it absurd to extend moral consideration to entities that aren't capable of suffering on any level? I get you're caring about puppies or even fish, but plants and bacteria are nowhere near conscious. Well, like, the thing is, when you think about things like that, it's like, well, it'd be interesting to the discussion about where do we draw the lines around personhood and how do we define suffering. Those are philosophical questions that I do not have answers to, and I don't think anyone does. And I think that those are those are things that I don't have an answer to. And so in my mind, I kind of just generalize and try to do things a lot. Citizen Fofi Hassel, you helped me a lot when I was politically confused. Anyway, can I pay back the favor? Yes. Share videos with your friends. Step Back grows primarily through word of mouth. Modern, like this most recent Paris Commune video aside, my videos don't get posted, don't do super well on Reddit. They don't get a lot of like recommended suggested videos from the algorithm. And so my channel grows a hell of a lot if you show the videos to other people. And you really related to the video about the Prussian school system and the struggles of having ADHD. Yeah, that was a really personal one. I really felt about that one. Nicholas Bryant, I became a patron because I found you at a low point in my life and I found you inspiring. You radicalized me now, so I'm an anarcho-communist. Well, that is very good news, Nicholas. Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words. I'm glad that I know it sounds like a cop-out, but I'm glad that I could help you in your intellectual journey, and I hope that you don't think that I've given you that I'm too responsible for it. This is an intellectual journey you made on your own, and I'm glad to have helped out. And Sirloin, I inspired you to become a leftist. That's good news. I appreciate that. Yeah, so on the suffering thing, I do think that there is philosophy surrounding this question about what is sentience, what is suffering, what makes, because like a lot of people would say, well, like, cows aren't really sentient, so who cares about like why shouldn't we eat cows? But then it's like, but can we extend that to whales? And some countries do, and like, how do we measure what is not sentient? And like, there are like, what's it called? There's like plants show some things that show that there are signs of that they do react to damage in interesting ways. And so, who knows? Are those D&D books behind you? Yes, they are. What is your D&D class? At the moment, in the campaign that I am playing in, I play a sorcerer. a kobold sorcerer who is a real jackass. Non-compete is streaming. Guess the stream is over. I'm going to go for a little bit. I know that we cross over for about an hour, but I will, I'll go till 10, and then I'll let you, then you guys can go all watch American Johnson. Family time is more important than YouTube, Glitch 42. I agree. Have you heard about schools in Brazil are now teaching Bolsonaro's campaign slogans to children? Also, thank you. Well, Sirloin, that is just disturbing. Have you considered a career in traditional K-12 education? If so, what are your thoughts on it? I'm studying history and strongly considering education, but teachers are treated very bad. Yeah, Jimmy Tyson is the question asker. I think that that's a thing that that's really a tough question to answer. I did consider K-12, probably like when I decided to, I used to, way back in the day, like 2007 so about 12 years ago, I was thinking that I was going to be a record producer. And when that fell apart in a very dramatic fashion, I decided to kind of reboot my life and go and go to university. And I was considering at one point being an English teacher. And but then I quickly switched into things like sociology and history. And I realized that I got to a point where I was like, you know, I think that K through 12, people who teach K through 12 are some pretty great souls. And I know that if you're American, that teachers are very underpaid. Ontario teachers actually do fairly well here, but you know, it's hardly balanced. And I think that to a lot of people who I know who do K through 12, it's really a calling, and I know that you'll have to, what's it called? You have to balance your interests, right? You have to balance what you want to do, and I know that money's tough. And you just want that easy YouTube money, yeah. So I went from wanting to be a K through 12 teacher to historian to, I guess, YouTuber. That's my career path. And record producer before that. So, you know, I always choose the best career paths. My parents are very proud of me. 255. I think most anti-captivity arguments come down to the naturalistic fallacy. Honestly, like I said, I haven't found a really strong comfortable place in my feelings about animal rights yet. I really think that I need to have like a serious thought with myself and maybe talk to Mexi a bit and kind of entertain ideas and think about things because, yeah. Is it exclusionary to say people who haven't been to medical school can't... Oh, it's a discussion with that. Okay. Who would win in a fight between Elon Musk or Dwayne the Glock Johnson? Definitely Dwayne Johnson. He's made of muscles. Jimmy Tyson, thanks so much for the thought reply. Well, thank you for asking. I know that if you want to be a teacher and that's what you want to do, it's going to be I mean, I'm not going to like, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to be a rough life, especially if you're in the United States, but you're doing the Lord's work. What would you say is the purpose of government? To keep power and resources in the hands of a small minority of very rich people, and to make sure that the capitalist system is kept from destroying itself, and to keep the masses under control with police. Then a bunch of other stuff to fulfill the functions of society and in order to keep revolution from happening. What's your view on left-wing Zionism? You've begun mentioning Jewish identity, so I honestly don't know how they articulate their arguments. It'd be interesting to. I'd like to hear. I'd like to know what their arguments are, but yeah. Empire Files. I already talked about Empire Files. with your pro-university stance. It seems to me a slightly anti-democratic way to say you need to spend several years in a post-extra educational institute to understand the world. I just think, so 255, like, the thing about university, and this is the reason I'm such a pro... the reason why I'm pro university is because it's just 4 years in your early adulthood where you are still kept from the responsibilities of work. You're taken out of, you know, the environment, the milieu that you've grown up in, and thrown into another context with people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And you are away from your, you know, if you move away to go to school, if you are away, then you get to be away from the influence of your parents, and you get to kind of turn into your own person. And so I do think that there is, I think that there's just a lot of, like, I wish that everyone had the opportunity to go to university. I think that it gives you a lot of opportunities, and it gives you a lot of opportunities for personal growth that you don't get otherwise. And so in my mind, it's not about like they need to learn the right way to do everything. It's just more like giving you some time to become yourself, and kind of get yourself out of the context you grew up in for a bit. And I think that there's value in that. What you actually take in the courses there, and also the fact that you have a lot more control over what courses you take. You know, you have your major, you have your things. I feel like those things, yeah, they let you explore yourself, and I think that's good. Honestly, I wish that we could do that all the time, forever. But in our current way of running the world, I would love if we could get just more people to do it. As an anarchist, I've had difficulties approaching the SNC Lavalin case. Do you see any value in the outcome of the case? Honestly, we'll have to wait until tomorrow. There's the Attorney General is talking tomorrow, and the government is saying that they are waiving solicitor-client privilege. So there's probably going to be a lot of stuff coming out. For anybody who's not Canadian, this is a scandal that's happening in the federal government where Justin Trudeau sounds like he might have just let a corporation get away with a crime. But we don't know. We haven't gotten to the bottom of it. Honestly, William, it's sort of a situation where not much has come to light yet about how deep this goes, and we're not really going to be on board for how bad it is until it actually happens. And this is something I've followed very closely because of my day job, so this comes up a lot. Can you ever be too young to subscribe to anarchism? Actually, I think that young people make very good anarchists because as children, you know, I feel like parents sort of start off teaching their kids more of like an idealized self, and then they get more like into maintenance mode as they get older. And so like when you have young kids, you teach them that you should play fair, and that sharing is caring, and that, you know, you shouldn't bully people. And then at some point in a child's development, we start telling them, actually, you should bully people because that's how you win, and that life isn't about sharing, it's not about caring, it's about ruthless competition and making as much money as possible. And that's like the part where they break you. Okay. Thoughts on non-compete Americans saying that we should have a leftist prepper movement? I don't know what his argument is on that. I feel like being a prepper is like it's a form of pessimism that I don't want to subscribe to. Did you say anarcho-syndicalism? Oh yeah, this is not for me. Argos, did you answer my very serious question? I think I did. That Dwayne the Glock Johnson would definitely win. Eli the Human, when I first became a communist, I would still say there are only two genders. I don't really know what changed me, but I think it's me spending time with Antifa. Yeah, honestly, like, a lot of things, a lot of the prejudices that are baked into us come out with exposure, just talking to friends and making new friends and meeting new people. Hence the university discussion earlier. The more that we can expose ourselves to different people with different experiences and different views on the world, the more rich your own thinking would be. What was the existential question, Argos? I don't remember that one. All right. Are there any good non-fedora hats for someone shaving their head due to baldness? The flat cap. That one is not fashy. Like the kind of... I have one. I'm not going to put it on, but I have, yeah, like a cabbie hat. Like those are... That one doesn't have negative associations yet. Should I kill someone to be very existential? I have no idea how to approach that question, Argos. I'm sorry. But you probably shouldn't kill anyone. Because I actually had a fedora that I really liked. It was really classy. And then the association with online men sort of ruined it for me. And now I really can't wear it out in public. It's sad because I really liked it and I spent a lot of money on it. Like, it's not one of those little hipstery ones. It was actually like almost like a Indiana Jones type hat. And also, I know that the hair on my head also has it has a limited it has a limited time, so I got to think about it too. Do you play an instrument? Well, William, I've played a few. Let me go. I played the flute for a couple years. I haven't played it in a long time, but I could probably pick it up again if I had a flute. I played the euphonium for a year, which is sort of like a small tuba. That one I might not be able to play. It's been way too long since I last played a euphonium. And the fingering on a euphonium is the same as a trumpet, so it would be easy to translate, but I have never really played a trumpet in a serious way. And I know that the embouchure, the way that you blow into a trumpet is very complicated, so I probably wouldn't be able to do it properly. And then I played bass guitar for a few years. I used to have this really awesome 5-string bass that I don't have anymore because I think it belonged to somebody else and we returned it to them. And then I tried playing guitar. I never really got very far with guitar. I have one in my apartment because I swear I'm going to learn it someday, but you know how I am. I have too many plates spinning at the moment. Maybe when I go full time I can give myself some time to play guitar and make that little green bar fill up, and so I can actually learn how to play stuff. And the biggest thing that I think I invested the most in is vocal. I was a competitive singer for about, I want to say, like 2 or 3 years. I was a competitive singer. I competed in the Royal Conservatory of Music competitions, usually in musical theater. But sometimes I did like with my coach. My coach had some other students who were a little bit older, and so the three of us would do a group sing together. All right. Did you know Bernie supported intervention in the Yugoslav war? No, that is not good. Well, I don't know. I definitely think that liberal interventionism is bad, but I also think that genocide of the Bosnians is also bad, and genocide of the Croatians is also bad. Yeah, I don't really know. I think I don't. The breakup of Yugoslavia and wading into those waters, I know they are very complicated, and I don't know what I'm talking about enough to prevent me from getting in trouble, so I don't really want to go further into that. But I just I don't know. I have Bernie. he's got issues. We talked about those issues earlier tonight. He's still just the best mainstream American politician who has a chance of becoming president. There's really, like, he's in a class all of his own. There's some that I would like take as like okay consolation prizes, but nothing would feel like a victory in the same way, because he's the only candidate that's like knocked down one of all of the like serious issues in American politics that have not been addressed for decades, sometimes not addressed for centuries, and I would really love to see that happen. Are you going to stream with Cody from the Alternate History Hub again? I mean, I'm waiting. Like, I'm basically waiting on him at this point. We have to wait until he gets. I'm waiting. Like, he'll ask me to stream. He usually tells me like the day of the stream that he's going to do one, and I'll tell him if I'm available. And I haven't heard from him in months, so, you know, I would do it if he asked. Is white genocide good or mixed babies cuter? White genocide is not a thing, because that implies that you should watch the Innuendo Studios video on fascism and how whiteness in the concept, in the like racist concept of race, whiteness is not considered a race. It's considered the lack of race, and it's exclusionary, not inclusionary. Well, like, you know, the idea that race is a thing, like biologically race is fucking meaningless. It doesn't have, it's a thing that we have imposed. It's a thing that is real because we've made it real. And honestly, like, the idea of white genocide is just because the way that they consider of racism, where like somebody can't be half white. They are either white or they are not white. And the way that that works is just like, that is not a recipe for any group of people to live for. Like, that is a recipe to always feel like you are losing, or you are disappearing, because we humans, we like to spread the genes around, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink. Do you think there's a shift to the left amongst millennial Americans? Yes. Compared to their parents, for sure. Yeah, white fascism. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that the Overton window is much wider for millennials, and even wider still for Gen Zers than, like, say, the Gen Xers and the Boomers. For sure. Like, millennials are entertaining socialism as a good idea, and then, I don't know, Gen Zers are, like, posting a picture of an elongated Buzz Lightyear head saying yeet. Whatever that means. I don't know what that means for the Overton window, but we'll figure it out. Glitch 42. Can the left take advantage of the Liberals' fumble in Canada? It would be nice. It's not likely, just because it's it'd be nice. It's not likely just because the NDP is not really in a great spot right now. The NDP is like we just got there was a by-election last night in which the leader finally got a seat in government, Jagmeet Singh, and Jagmeet Singh is not doing great at inspiring new NDP voters, and so most experts are expecting the NDP to come down, to lose a lot of their following. And so if this liberal fumble really falls apart, it's more likely to result in a conservative government at this point than like an NDP one, because the NDP's got a lot of a really uphill fight. They need a new leadership. They need to change tack hard, because they're still sort of trying to get this smiling, non-confrontational concept of politics through, and it's just not the right time. They really should have chosen Nikki Ashton to lead the party. That we'd be in a very different situation if that was the case, because she was more like the Jeremy Corbyn type candidate for the party, and she just lost. Have you checked out Secular Talk on YouTube? I think I have. I've always found it reasonably entertaining, but also not enough to subscribe. I think Secular Talk is sort of like Sam Cedar and sort of like the Young Turks and sort of like there was another one, the Majority Report, where it's just like, yeah, it's all right. I really like, it's just a lot of YouTube videos, and honestly, like, I already get the news. I don't really need the news again from one dude's perspective. Like, I'm good on that. Alfonso, have you played the last 2 Wolfenstein games, and do you agree that Max Hass is the ultimate anti-fascist? I haven't played them. I think I have them purchased, or I have one of them purchased. I just haven't played it. The last Wolfenstein game I played is like the one where you kill Robot Hitler at the end. It's like, I think it's just Wolfenstein, like from like the 90s. I'm not a Zionist. I can explain Zionist left. For them, it's not about land. It's about forming a secular Jewish national identity, and they believe that the occupation impedes that goal. The only thing about that is, like, it belies left ideas, because the left is distinctly anti-nationalist. It's the idea of a nation state is a conservative idea, or it is a right-wing idea. And so I think that in many ways that sounds like they have left-wing opinions, and then in spite of all that have this idea of creating a state for all people of one, like, ethnic identity, which is, that's not great. Argos Panoptes, will the gamer genocide happen if Anita comes back to video game criticism? Is she coming back to video game criticism? I have no issues with Anita Sarkeesian, so okay. Who put the alphabet in alphabetical order? You know what, Kashmoot? I have thought this as well, and I don't know the answer, but I have looked for it. The closest I ever came to is there's a Vlogbrothers video about it that got the closest to an actual answer, so you should just look that up. Actually, let me see if I can find it for you. It's an old Vlogbrothers video, but here, put it in the chat for you. All right. What exactly is bourgeoisie history? It is just history written from the perspective of the bourgeoisie. So it is the idea, it is like the sort of, I think that sometimes it would be called the Whig history of countries like France and the United States, the sort of making heroes of the powerful, wealthy elite people who led revolutions and things like that. Max Hass is a disabled character from the last 2 games that draws these beautiful color murals everywhere and just loves everyone except Nazis, of course. That sounds like a nice person. But yeah, there's a lot of history that is written from the perspective of the wealthy and powerful and doesn't respect, like, movements and the role of those that are considered the underclass. So but do you believe that whites have been genocide in the past, like Irish, Eastern Europeans, and Jews, if you count them as white? I think that, like, whiteness is a social category that has changed over time. And I think you just pointed to that white used to be a much more exclusive category, and that has changed in order to make sure that there weren't groups to be on the side of slaves and former slaves. And so they integrated them and absorbed them into what the idea of whiteness. And so, honestly, No, because back then those people weren't considered white. Whiteness is, you know, the privileged elite. Like it's never been it's not defined through anything objective. It's defined by whatever the white people who run the world want to say that it is. Yar. Okay. What are your thoughts on deportation of around 12 million Germans from Eastern Europe after World War II? Do you think it was justifiable due to Hitler using them as an excuse for German expansion? I don't know that much about it, but definitely expelling people from regions that they lived in is not nice. Don't do that. A wingless monkey. I thought the NDP had been claiming Jagmeet was bringing in new voters. Did that evaporate once he got out of affluent cities? It's that, and it's also the fact that, like, Quebec doesn't like him very much, and I don't know, he hasn't really done great at being an inspiring leader. Like, the NDP is infighting more because of him and not really making gains because of him, and it'd be really great if you know, it would be great if there was more, if the NDP had a more sort of piss and vinegar type of leader right now. What do you say to a university dropout in their mid-20s who doesn't know what to do? That's a good question. That's a question that we should all be asking ourselves. If you were looking for a career path, that's a matter of figuring out what options you have ahead of you. We live in a sort of economy that is really not like a meritocracy anymore. And so honestly, like, without the formal degrees and stuff like that, there's actually a whole lot more things that you can do than in the past, but still it's not going to be fair because it's going to rely a lot on particular skills that don't necessarily result in you being better at your job. But the trick is it's really all about networks and making relationships. And so I'll give you an example of when my wife was looking for work after she finished her PhD, which is that the way that she eventually found her work was by doing this thing where she just went out and met with people in the industries that she wanted to work in and asking them about how their job worked and who was big and what they should do and what she should get up to. And they gave her advice on places to go and things to do and stuff to sign up for. And those are the things that helped her out. And really, there's like this whole thing called the informal job market that's really about like finding through personal connections things to do. And sometimes like people are more receptive than you think to like just emailing them out of the blue and asking, hey, can we, I really admire the stuff you're doing. Can we get coffee sometime? And can I just talk about the kind of work that you're doing? More people would say yes to that than you think. And then it's just a matter of trying to figure out what the field looks like and seeing how you can get your way into it. But that requires a certain type of personality, very gregarious, very outgoing, and that's not fair. This is not a fair world we live in. That sucks, and I wish it wasn't the case. But that is the way that things work, unfortunately. If you can even do it in a small extent, it would be worth trying. And also just taking tabs of the skills that you have. Like, I think somebody once said that, like, the best thing to do for your career is finding something that you love to do that everybody else hates doing. And if you can get that, then you get a good idea of what thing you should be going down. And just taking a tab of, like, what things are you good at doing? And if there's anything that you are interested in going into, is there a way for you to learn it without having to go back to school in a meaningful way? Like, can you teach yourself a skill? Like, if you wanted to learn, I don't know, if you wanted to learn video editing, Go to does your library have like a Lynda subscription where you can learn how to use Premiere or something? Like, is there something that you can like learn on your own? Because in a lot of these fields now, the like big, like the diploma doesn't matter as much as it used to. And if you can show a portfolio of work, that is a lot more successful. And so, pick up skills that you think they'll work. Unfortunately, it does mean like basically figuring out how to sell your surplus labor to make other people rich. And I said, this is a super crappy way to run a world, but unfortunately this is where we are. But hopefully you try long enough, you talk to enough people, you make enough connections, that something will come up for you. Eventually. It's going to be punishing. It's going to feel so demoralizing and disheartening, but hopefully on a long enough time scale, it'll pan out. I think at some point I started talking about step back. So, moving on. All right. What do you think about Gen Z? I'm part of it, and it seems that it's split between fascists and communists. The centrists are not that frequent anymore. Honestly, I'm like not sure, because anytime you talk to there's a lot of Gen Z people where you're like, well, what are your political opinions on this? And then they're like, it's just memes. I'm just trolling. LOL, yeet, TikTok. And like, that's, like, I think that there's like this, I think somebody mentioned earlier in the chat, like a Dadaist, extreme levels of irony, sort of thinking in Gen Z that I think is interesting. I think it's weird, but in a very intriguing way. And I would love to see what they do when they're not just trolling and they're actually doing action. And I think 2020 is supposed to be the first election where the Gen Z voters are the biggest voting demographic. And combined, millennials and Gen Z are way outweigh the Gen Xers and the boomers now. And so this is the election. This is like the first. This can be like the first election where like a good majority of the United States doesn't have direct experience of the Cold War. Like, I was technically born during the Cold War, but like the Soviet Union collapsed when I was like 2. So, and I'm like 30. So, post-ironic humor. Yeah, I think that honestly, like the Gen Z people are still, like millennials didn't really come into their own until we were a little bit older than you guys. And I think that give it a few more years and we'll see what Gen Z's really about. I think they haven't had a chance to prove themselves. I think that they are, compared to us, the millennials, they're definitely a lot less, they seem to be a lot less concerned with like living your best life and experiences and sort of that kind of touchy-feely stuff that the millennials really got into. We liked our comedy was like I'm trying to think, like the fact that like one of the most popular like Gen Z millennial or Gen Z like style of humor is like a guy who just like goes into a donut shop and like just steals a box of donuts and just runs out and films himself on Instagram doing it. Like that, like, I don't know. I think that I have a lot of hope in the Gen Z people, and I hope that they do great things. And it seems that they are, at least, I know that there's a big fascist contingent, and I really hope that they grow up. Maybe that's me being conceited, but luckily, just like when millennials were kids, we can still have hope. and then when the rubber hits the road, then I'm sure us millennials who will be in our 40s at that point will start shit talking you. So let's look forward to that, I guess. But I think that you know, Gen Z is going to be more conservative. Maybe. I think that, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to be. We'll see. That's a little depressing. I think that Gen Zers are like millennials. I think the big difference between millennials and Gen Zers is that millennials grew up in the context of having a pretty good childhood and then having our adulthood basically be the experience of getting smashed in the face with a brick wall. So I think that like millennials had we grew up in a pretty comfy situation and then had everything taken away the second that we were entering the job market. And so our whole thing is like nostalgia for childhood and like thinking about how great, like, let's remake all of the fucking, let's turn all the comic books into movies and remake every movie ever made and that kind of stuff. And I think that but like the Gen Zers, they grew up when things are shitty, and, you know, inshallah, they'll, things, like, I don't think things will get better, but I hope, I mean, and like, they're like the first children born out, they're the first children after the apocalypse, you know, like they are the ones where they had no expectation of doing great things with their life. They had no expectation of like having any sort of the expectations of the things that like the older generations would ever get. Like they know they're fucked. We were like, we thought we had it made, and then we found out we were being fucked. So like they knew it from their childhood. And so, you know, I feel like that is like a lot more, they're the anti-boomers. I would like to hear you elaborate on that while I go to the next question. Do you know what pirate politics is? No. Yar. Unless you're talking about like the Pirate Party, which is like an anti-copyright party kind of thing, which I think is kind of cool. There's a woman that I knew when I was a kid. Not when I was a kid. When I was living in a different city, who she's really into pirate party politics. I don't really know that much, but I don't really know that all that much. All right. Thoughts on Dostoevsky and reactionary literatures? Many writers like D'Annunzio, D.H. Lawrence, and Yeats are proto-fascists or outright fascists. Even Shaw supported Hitler. Argos, I think you very overestimate my intelligence on this. I actually can't speak too much about literature. I'm not that, even though the fact that I taught an English course, I TA'd a children's literature course. I can't speak too much about literature. I don't know that much. I took three English classes in undergrad, and one was on internet journalism, one was on graphic novels, and then the third one was feminist literary theory, which I think doesn't apply really to this conversation. So it's not really a thing I know too much about. I'm sorry. All right. Gen friends are talking about boomers taking all the insurance. Yeah. Boomers are entitled and had lots of opportunities, while most of Gen Z just seems kind of nihilistic. Yeah. I think that the nihilism and cynicism of Gen Zers compared to millennials, I think, is a big distinction. Millennials are idealists who got smashed in the face. I feel like if there's like a if there's going to be a comparison, it's going to be the difference between, like, millennials are like the people who grew up in the 1920s, and then right as they were like 18, the Great Depression happened, and they like spent their like early formative adult years in the Depression, while like Gen Zers are kids born in the Depression, and like they know, like they're like the kids born in the Depression are like the ones who, when they were older, were way more like frugal and way more like we must like eat everything on your plate and like it's like my grandmother basically. But like feeling like how the because like the millennials then in that case were the ones that became the GI generation, which except we didn't get a World War II, thank God. But yeah, and Gen X had not a lot of nihilism. Yeah, who knows? I feel like this whole idea of generations is another social construct that doesn't really work out all that well. And I don't know. I hope them the best. And on that note, I think I'm gonna have to wind down the stream because my throat is starting to die. And it is 9:45. And the questions have finished. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, but yeah, you guys have been awesome. Gonna get a quick step to you guys, hopefully on Thursday. Hopefully nothing like nothing really gets ruined for you, or hope nothing ruins it. But I'm gonna try to record a video. It might be tight, and then I should have another step back video on March 8th, and there's probably going to be a there's probably also going to be a it's gonna be a quick step next week and a step back video, and then there's gonna be one week after that too. So you guys are gonna get a lot of step back content in the next little while. So I hope you guys can enjoy your evening, and I'm gonna go now. Good night, friends.